everybody doing? We missed you last week. It's been, it's kind of crazy. We took off a whole week and feels like we haven't talked to anybody for such a long time. I was able to take an 8-day social media break.
Cool, girl.
If you guys have not taken a social media break, I highly encourage you to turn off your phones for at least a week. It is amazing. Tonight, we're going to be talking about fiber, keto diet and fiber. How are you, Dr. Boz?
Oh, it is Sunday night, which is like the best. It's like the beginning of my week. So I have to have all these things done by like right now. And so good thing we're done. Good thing we're here. You know, it's actually turned out a really good way for me to prep for the week. But today's Father's Day, and I felt like the focus was supposed to be my husband. And about noon, I said, I got like 400 things that need to be done in the next few hours. Happy Father's Day. And then I ran away. No. It's that summertime too, where I've got kids at camp. I've got one in your area.
What?
Yeah, you're near Dallas, right?
No, I'm in Austin.
Oh, Austin. Okay. Yeah. Well, he's in Dallas with a whole bunch of other nerds that love to debate. And so it's the National Debate Tournament in Dallas. And I just wish him all the best. He's a sophomore and made it to nationals. And I'm just so proud of him. I tease him that I don't know what I was thinking to teach my kids to argue with me this much, but it really does force, you know, especially in today's world, force those teenagers to argue one side of the debate and then argue the other, and then watch their brains just grow and expand. So, and my 13-year-old is actually at wrestling camp, and I walk into wrestling camp to pick him up. He was just home for 2 days and back, but the coach pulled me aside and said, I've been watching you on YouTube. I have some questions about the ketogenic diet. And I'm like, that is something I would love to sit still and talk to you about. So that was kind of a surprise. Like, oh.
You get the same questions I do in the grocery store, at schools. You get it everywhere, don't you?
Yeah. And, you know, it is a sign that you're in the right space, though, because it's refreshing. I like, even after like, what is it, 3 years now or whatever? I'm like, I just get so excited to talk to him about it. Like, oh, where are you at? And what level are you stuck at? And what are your questions? And so, you look at the blessings in life, say, no, when I get put in a place that I know I'm meant to be, anytime somebody brings it up, I just feel energized and like I want to pour in heavier. So
yeah, I remember when I talked to the deli county, the lady who worked the deli counter at the grocery store was a naysayer for keto, and I tried it and I did this, and I spent an hour talking with her, and by the time I was done, she was like, well, maybe I was doing it wrong because you make it sound so easy. And I was like, it was the best hour. If I can convince one person in an hour to do that, that was an hour worth spent. And I never got her name. She never got my name.
I bet she found you eventually, though. Even if you don't find her, I bet she found you.
Yeah, I never told her about what we do online. I never told her anything. I just really wanted to convince her. I didn't want her to think anything other than that diet was good for her. And it's changing. And it changed my life. It could change hers. I just knew it could.
Well, and I do think that there is some power in like finding the people whose voice connects. I mean, I now, the book has been out for a little over a year and a couple of months, whatever, year and 3 months or something. And I just look at the people who have appreciated it because it was this, just like your cookbook, it's the people who connect in that level of language. Like this is the kind of cooking I want to do, which is me. It's busy. It's got the ingredients that aren't too goofy and dang, it better taste good. I got teenagers to figure out how to keep on this. Same thing when you start explaining the ketogenic diet, and then you empower you and you empower the people that come to the clinic, they then ripple it in a way that teaches others that isn't so scary, like you're going to die of ketoacidosis or something like that.
Yes. And it's funny because you do connect with those people. Those people have to be wanting to change also. They have to really want it. They have to want to do it. And I see people, especially in the group that we run, Low Carb Inspirations on Facebook, There are some people that are just so upset that they can't convince family members that they really care about, that have health problems that it can be fixed with diet, because we have it so ingrained in our heads.
Yeah.
You need a pill or you need this, but starting with the diet is the most powerful. And people are so upset. And I'm like, they have to want it. They have to want it bad enough to even be open to the change. Don't you think?
Oh, and it's amazing to me when I've had the side of even just like prescriptions, when I say, you know what, I know that there is a stage in your life that I will be able to help you walk through and fix your high blood pressure and fix your weight problem. But right now, this is the stage you're at. And when you're ready, I have this great way to help you get off of all these things. But if you try to start out saying, here, you're going to do this, and you're going to go empty your cupboards, and you're going to change out all those things you're addicted to that you don't even know you're addicted to yet, and all these flying, distracting almost, like levels of recommendation, when what they're expecting is, here's a high blood pressure, here's a prescription, and we start there, even though in my heart I totally want them to do something different, but they're not ready for that. And you say, when they are, I have this really great option. And I just think that's the same way that happens when you bring up, oh, there's this ketogenic way of eating, and like they don't even know what that word means yet, or they barely know what it means yet. It's hard to not know what it means these days, isn't it?
Oh, I know. Like for us, when we started, we had to make all the mistakes because we had nobody to teach us. I remember my dad, and this goes into scaring you into wanting a change. We grew up eating, what we called hot dish. It was some sort of rice and noodles with hamburger, with thrown in with soup, cream of mushroom soup, cream of tomato soup. And it was a big dish. And to make it last even longer, you would add more rice and more noodles to it. That was a very cool meal for us.
That's totally right. Yes.
We never had vegetables. We had corn. Corn was their favorite. And so when my dad saw the changes that I was making in my lifestyle, whatever, and then he got back from the doctor one time, and he was pretty scared because his A1C was up, and she told him, you need to make a change. And it scared him so bad that he called me and goes, okay, tell me about this thing.
and then it really is the best part about saying, now you've got the words, you've got the inspiration. And it's not like what I did for so many years on the low-fat diet, where I'm saying, you're going to feel terrible forever. You're going to have low energy forever. When your hair falls out, ain't coming back. I mean, I think I've seen more hair fallout questions over the last week than you kept saying. I see them. I'm like, I've seen the flood of them this week. And I'm like, no, just wait. You're going to be fine. Just stay the course, watch the videos. But to have in your journey, and I'll tell you, for so long, that low fat recommendation, it was almost like I couldn't do it. I couldn't tell another person, because it was the doom that was headed their way, of not like, oh, you're going to have the keto flu for a few days if you do it this way or that way. You're really going to have a struggle, especially the longer you go on, the worse you're going to feel. And I'm really thankful that we don't have to do that anymore. I feel so confident I will never, ever, ever have to do that again.
Yeah. You know what I'm thankful for? I remember growing up, just in high school, out of high school, I remember, why do I feel so bad? Why is it that when I try and diet, I feel horrible? I can't do it. It doesn't get me anywhere. I'm shaky. Why is it that those people can eat pancakes and they look great and I can't? I remember asking these questions. I've asked so many people and I never understood. And I am so grateful today that I know a different way, because I do love food. I love food that tastes really good. And I love that it can fit my lifestyle, and I can eat certain things that are really good. I feel like I have the answers now, where I didn't have those before. I have knowledge. And once you have this knowledge of keto, there's no turning back.
Oh, it's empowering.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna speaking of questions with answers, I'm looking at one of your comments that says, Christy Wilkins Rowell, can you explain the info about the hairless legs? So again, hair loss on your head was one thing, but this hairless leg thing is real. And I remember one of the like quick things as a resident or even a medical student where you're trying to gauge what's the health of somebody, the length from the tip of their toe up their leg, how far have they stopped growing hair? So he talked this one time about the swelling in your leg and using your thumb to check swelling, but like the next layer after chronic swelling has been there, and even if the patient doesn't know that chronic swelling's been there, if they've stopped growing hair, it's a sign that there is decreased nourishment to the hair follicle. And the hairy toes are good things. Sometimes you can keep a few hairs on the toe, but as they work up the ankle and even a couple inches above the ankle, if they've stopped growing hair, think of it as the level of nourishment. This is sacrificable. You don't need hair in your ankles to keep your heart beating. And so it's a way of reflecting circulation and especially delivery of that important nutrients to repair and to supply that hair follicle with the nourishment it needs to keep making a hair.
So when somebody doesn't have hair, what do they do?
So the key thing is to say, this is not new. This is not yesterday's problem. This is the last 10 years problem, 5 to 10 years. So that's why we would look at it as a medical student and say, okay, there's little problems that are here in the last few weeks. And then there's these long ones that we're going to have to eventually discuss, maybe probably in the clinic, but the length of time of repairing them is going to have to do with how long has your blood pressure been controlled? What is your blood sugar? How much inflammation is throughout the system? Has your arteries already hardened? Have you calcified your arteries already? Because if I'm trying to get nourishment through a calcium-filled wall of those little bitty capillaries, you're like, that is another checkpoint against us. So you can say, what do? You start and you put your blinders on and say, steady, stable course of decreasing blood sugars, decreasing blood pressure, getting that waistline down to a normal level. And don't think about exercise. Think about changing the metabolism and the chemistry in your system to get that back.
So basically do keto. Just do keto. It'll get you there, right?
Yes. Yep. Mm-hmm.
So Rowena says, hi, Rowena, welcome to the channel. She says she's just starting out. Any advice? Oh my gosh, I love this question. We hug with newbies because there's so many people that are on here all the time. But the one thing I love to tell newbies is that normally in the standard American diet, you're eating between 200, 250 carbs a day and sugars, grains. Lower the carb limit. Get it? Anything under 250 is going to get you some form of success. So cut out the white stuff, cut out the sugars, focus on eating real food and healthy fats. And if you do that in just the beginning, you're going to see a big change already. Mm-hmm. And food is the biggest thing that you have to change. And that's a lot. Just to be able to cut out sugar and lower the carbs, that's a lot. So don't do anything else until you're very comfortable with the food choices. That's my best advice.
Yeah, and absolutely. The other part is when I look at the 200 club, and that is you'll get people who have improved their diet. They've been on paleo. They've had less carbs. And boy, their transition really is a lot easier because they have probably touched ketosis a few times in that diet. But if they're part of that 200 club, meaning their carbs have been over 200 for a long period of time, I have changed my recommendations that say, you want the best transition, wake up your mitochondria before you take away the carbs. And that means supplementing with those ketones-in-a-can for at least give yourself 7 to 10 days. And during those 7 to 10 days, even if you don't cut your carbohydrates at all, what you are doing is waking up the mitochondria, waking up the way your body is able to process fats. So when you do drop those carbs, your mitochondria aren't still sleeping for the next 3 days. You've kind of prepared them for that. And I didn't used to recommend that, but I've had a few, especially those who've just been super overweight or been a type 2 diabetic for 10, 15 years, and their sugars are constantly at 200. I mean, they're really out of control diabetics. Wow. They don't do very well when I say, cut your carbs, you'll be fine. Their metabolism is ready. One
of the things when you do cut it, just knowing that there's that 3 days of sugar cravings. Like you will have bad cravings for like 3 days, but knowing if you really stop them and there is a light at the end of the tunnel, but like you say, those ketones can help suppress some of the appetite. Yeah.
And you know, there's a difference between when you tease your mitochondria that are all sleepy. I mean, even just to get them through that first week, I don't care how they do it, get to the end of that week and get into that 20 carbs or less per week. And even if the supplements still go in for 2 or 3 weeks, we've learned the key is they keep at it. Don't give up. Don't give up.
Yeah.
And that it really does get so much. I mean, how long are you at 2.5 years?
Has to be 2.5 years. I think I've stopped counting.
So the Jen said, how are you drinking ketones?
Oh.
So tell them about the first time you tasted ketones and what you did.
Okay. They are absolutely gross. I'm just going to be totally honest. I've done my journey for the first 2 years without ketones, and there's a lot of controversy about them. I'm not one that really supports them full on, probably because I did it without them. And the goal is to get your body burning ketones. It's getting your body into a state of ketosis. So I have this love-hate relationship because
it's real. And
because I don't want to do them, but if there's a case where I'm talking to somebody and they have such bad cravings or they have something that's not going to allow them to get to the diet, then I will tell them to do a ketone.
So I've actually used this in the last week too. I think is a good way to think about it is that if you come in, just like I was talking about that patient who I have all these things and I'd love them to do the keto diet, but they have high blood pressure and their sugar's high and they have all these other things that we need to take care of. I'm going to write them a prescription because they're just not ready for all that change. Yeah. And the prescription is not supposed to be for the rest of your life. It's supposed to get you to the point where you are ready to change. When you look at some of the brains that are foggy, the brains that have no energy, when the bodies are really slow metabolisms, and now you're asking them to be disciplined, and sometimes they don't have a support system. Sometimes they don't even know what carbohydrates are. We talk about carrots and they think that can't be a carb. And I'm like, we got a lot of learning to do. So I tell them just supplement with ketones while we go through these next 2 weeks, because by the time you figure out all these rules that we just went through, and there's not a lot of them, but for some, it is a steep learning curve. You're going to be done with needing the supplement, and the transition will be so much gentler on your system because we make ketones in the chemistry lab. We put them in a supplement. We use some sugar substitutes to make them not taste as awful as Jennifer tells us about because they are salts, but they've been around for a while. And we have learned so much about when you just supply them in your system, you can let that be the beginning of an easier way to join all of us where we don't need to use them anymore. Just like my patients that are off of their prescription medications. You can't start that tomorrow if you've got 3 blood pressure medicines and you don't have a kind of, I think, of a support system to help you through this next couple of weeks.
Yeah, definitely. If you need them, hey, no judgment. Go ahead, take them and make it easier. The goal is just to get you in a state of ketosis. And if you meet that goal with a little bit of aid or help, then more power to you. Get to the club.
Yeah, right. Get to the club. That's exactly right. Speaking of the club, so our focus for tonight, why don't you introduce what it is?
Oh my gosh, we want to talk about fiber because there's so much. Have you noticed that there's a lot of products coming out with fiber? Like I got this in the mail, Catalina Crunch cereal, I think sent me something, and there was all this fiber in there. First of all, my first thought was, I do miss cereal. I do miss the crunchiness of cereal. But then when I looked at the ingredients, I was like, wait, they said this was keto? And then, the thing is, you just got to eat real food. Like there's some things you can make, there's ingredients that you can put together. But when you start playing around in a lab and you're starting to put all this fiber and you're starting to put all these things together, you might use it for once in a great while, but don't make it your everyday food. So I think that's what sparked the conversation for fiber is there's so much question, like what is fiber? Do we need it? And you had a wonderful slide deck and I I had some computer issues, so I could not pull that up.
It's okay. You know, it is a layers of conversation that I've tried to have about fiber, because some people know a lot about it, and some people it's a very basic understanding yet. So I'm going to start with some basics, and we're going to go to some more advanced. We'll see if we get more advanced before we get done. So I think of when I tell my kids about fiber, I say there is some food that goes in one end and comes out the other. We cannot digest it. It is not meant to, we don't have a rumen like a cow does with special kinds of grinding and enzymes that break down fiber. We have to have, we have some foods that just come in one end and go out the other. And for many years, in fact, almost all of the guidelines still talk about how important fiber is for the health of their bowel. Now, I would argue some of those things based on my experiences in the last 3 years on the ketogenic diet. But I am absolutely one of the physicians that's written out you need 30 grams of fiber a day. If you can't eat that many grams of fiber, you need to be supplementing with things like Metamucil and the like. What happens over the course of a ketogenic diet is when they first go ketogenic diet, it really does. Most of our fiber is, if you kind of took it down to a molecule level, it's a bunch of little carbs that are put together, like a bunch of little glucoses that are put together, or fructose or maltose. They're little molecules that we make and that nature makes, and sometimes the chemists make, that are not absorbable unless they get broken down by a couple of other places. And unfortunately, some of the fiber substitutes that are used in our in huge amount of uptick of products for the ketogenic diet, some of those do actually increase. You break them down within your gut, and you turn them into glucose, and so you turn them into regular sugar and carbs that, just like eating a little orange juice might do. I really point this out because I think the best answer for the long-term health of the patient is that their inflammation gets lower and lower and lower and lower. And we've learned that one of the things that the fiber did was it might have increased or decreased the transit time, meaning the food got out of the body quicker when you put more fiber in it. But what it did do is it really was very inflammatory to a lot of that colon. And we see increases in symptoms from their inflammatory bowel, from their irritable bowel. Even if they have leaky gut, the fiber added would really cause a storm almost in their bowel. And so it became this place where, as a physician, this was one of the toughest parts where I'm like, what do I tell them now? And it wasn't until I'd probably been on the diet for almost a year that I got last name Harcum, Harcomb.
Yeah, Zoe Harcum.
Yeah. She does a great lecture of just kind of breaking down the science behind what we have learned about the ketogenic diet and fiber in it, and then
She's from Wales, and I just met her at Low Carb Denver. She did that presentation exactly. Yeah. It was amazing.
Yes. And the literature behind that is powerful. I'd collected probably 3 or 4 of those articles, but she did an extensive review of what the literature shows for why do we tell people to have high fiber? And the answer is, I don't really know. After you listen to this wasn't evidence-based, this wasn't evidence-based, this wasn't evidence-based. You're like, wait a minute, how did I get all these guidelines on my list as a physician to tell my patients if it didn't come from evidence? And the answer is, well, it's a long answer. We're not going to go into that. But the punchline was fiber is a component of several small glucose, fructose, maltose molecules. Those are carbohydrate based. There is no essential carbohydrate, meaning essential in our diet means you have to have it or your body will die. There are essential proteins. If you don't have these proteins, your human body will die. There are essential fats. If you don't have these, your human body will die. There are essential micronutrients like minerals and vitamins, but there is no essential carbohydrate, and fiber is a bunch of carbohydrates strung together. Fiber is not essential. It is not essential. And this is a newer approach to many patients who has transitioned from, oh my goodness, Kimberly Bellissimo is on. I totally have to say hi. Oh, she's like one of my dearest friends from DC. Oh my goodness. Oh, I totally got goosebumps. That's so cool to see a friend that I haven't talked to in a while.
Awesome. Did you know that Zoe Heracombe, she got a little bit of flack for that presentation she did? Did you know that?
No, tell me.
Oh yeah. So the thing was, at the end of the presentation, and this conference wasn't that long ago, so I remember it. She talks about how the fight between low carbers and high carb people and the fight for fiber. She went on to say that fiber was not essential, but then she says that you can get it from flaxseed, raw alfalfa, asparagus, artichokes. And she says the fiber for low carbers in those type of foods will always win that fight. So she kind of got a little flack because she said it's not essential, but then she says how we get it. So,
well, yeah, here's the deal though. So let's just kind of let's go all the way to carnivore for a minute. So, I mean, I think you and I have done this journey where first we start with low carb, and then, you know, you mastered some food and I started starving because I didn't know how to cook. But you get to that point where you're like, all right, I realize if I want to take my weight loss to the next level, I really need to take out some of the extra cooking and really come back to that higher fat, some protein in it. And you kind of find yourself almost on the edge of carnivore without knowing it.
Yeah.
And then you say, oh, well, what if I did that for a while? And I think you called it beef and butter fast. Like that was a great, like, oh, what if I do this? I step over the threshold for 3 or 4 days or 5 days, whatever it was. And you're like, wow, I lost weight. I felt better. Look at the improvement I had. And I think that's the key to a different level of, if you did that the first week, you probably would have had constipation and your body wasn't ready for it. Yeah. But you'd been kind of low carb, improving that nutrients along what I think of as an important measurement, you know, for health is your slime layer. Sounds disgusting, but starting from your nose to your anus, from your mouth to your anus, the slime. And inside your nose, we call it a booger, but inside your mouth, we call it saliva. And inside your stomach, we call it the gastric lining. And then you get to the different parts of the bowel, we call it other things. But what we're looking for is how dense, how strong is your slime. Yeah. And that sounds gross, but it really is. Like, if it is interconnected and really a nice protective slime layer, it means you don't have a lot of inflammation around and your nourishment is strong. But if you have chronic inflammation, then it starts to weaken that slime layer, or they kind of go hand in hand, that this gets less and less. And what Zoe Heracombe said in that lecture was, we've just found that when their nourishment is strong again, they've got the fat, the essential fats they're eating, they've got the essential proteins and their micronutrients, and there wasn't a lot of fiber, their bowel pattern really was healthy, even though it wasn't what the fiber level of bowels were. And I have found that to be so true with my patients. Like, you know, my favorite argument was, if you increase the transit time of getting food through the bowel, that's what fiber does. Mm-hmm. And that way you don't have that yucky food hanging out in your bowel kind of stagnant. Mm-hmm. And you're like, wait a minute. If your goal is to have no food in the bowel, which actually is a good thing, you should just try fasting. Yeah. Because 2 days of fasting and you're like, oh, my bowel got a total break. And it's amazing how much that changed my perspective of saying, oh, if the goal was really to increase transit time, quit giving them diarrhea and improving how quickly the food goes by. Give them times where they have none. And of course, you can't ask them to do that on a carb diet. They will kill you. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's a total transition, because in the beginning, when you transition from regular standard American diet to keto, your bowels go through a major change. And we talked about that hack before with the chia seeds, to add that just straight in, to add that bulk to push it through.
But Zoe Harcombe, she did state that fasting was also recommended.
Did she say that too? Yeah.
She did.
Because it is one of those places where you have a tough time appreciating the energy that I have behind recommending intermittent fasting after they've, say 6 weeks into this or so, where they've really got a solid attention to the rules and they understand what they're doing. And then watch how much better they feel when you give them 36 hours with no calories. And it sounds outrageous the first time you say this to somebody. So if you're new to this, please do not be scared away. I went a whole year before I fasted 36 hours. It's not necessary. There are many people that are healthy enough that don't need to do it, but I can't tell you how much better I feel, but my patients feel, especially my chronic inflamed bowel patients, when they got to the part where they had 3 meals a week, meaning they did 48 hours, over and over and over again, and almost reversed their inflammatory bowel disease. I cannot believe how much better they are.
Oh, so Joan says the slime discussion is helpful to me. I audited on, I'm not sure what she's trying to say. She took chia seeds and was painfully introduced to diverticula I didn't know I had.
Right. Again, diverticula is one of those little out pouches that almost every person has in today's world from our Western diet. But you go back to mummies, 1,500 years ago, and they didn't have as many diverticula, maybe a couple, nothing like we see in the bowels of today. And so you say, well, how do you keep the little seeds out of falling into those little pockets? And one of those preventions is the thickness and the viscosity of your slime. And it sounds kind of gross, but it's so powerfully important to how our body works. This is not disconnected from the health of your gut biome or the kind of critters that are going to live better in your gut when you're on a low carb diet, a high fat diet, versus those that don't live so well when you've got a lot of carbohydrates or a lot of legumes going from one end to the next. They really do shift what grows in that bowel, and that bacteria, that natural set of bugs, is going to be the other predictor for how thick your slime layer is.
Sorry, I'm laughing because Kirk says gross.
All right. Like just what you wanted to turn on is turn on the computer and hear us talking about your slimy poop. Like, oh, I'm turning the channel.
Alicia says, I think people need to do what works for them. I did the beef and butter fast and I felt amazing. Don't know that I could live there, but could rock it now and again. You know what, Felicia, that's exactly what I do when I've kind of veered off track or I need to get back on and get kind of strict. I totally do a beef and butter fast. And sometimes I eat really simple during the week because that is absolutely strict keto. Beef with butter, and the seasonings are your carbs. If you look at that, that is the exact strictest form of keto that you can do. So yeah, that's what I totally do during the week.
You want to know the other thing that I had an appreciation for this week? So in South Dakota, we have these wonderful people called, they're Hutterites, and they live in community and colonies throughout South Dakota. About 150 live on each colony, and they're very traditional in their Anabaptist kind of ways, but they always bring me fresh vegetables at this time of year. And I'm super grateful. Like, oh, I love this part of the year because their gardens are like organic and I didn't have to weed them, but they brought me some fresh vegetables. So I was at a colony and I had lunch with them on Saturday, and they made spinach, which again, great vegetable. But since I've been on the ketogenic diet, I have only had spinach with heavy cream, butter, sour cream. I mean, there's so much fat in my spinach that I'm like, I love cream spinach, but it's been a while since I've tasted spinach without all that fat. And I can't tell you how much better it tastes on the ketogenic diet when you use these fats in your fiber. Because again, that's one of those places where you say, what are some of the vegetables that we use on the ketogenic diet? And one of them that hits the top of the thing is spinach or kale. And you say, yeah, people's face kind of make this like, Popeye only eats spinach kind of stuff. Until you add butter, fat, and some garlic. And then you're like, oh, I can't hardly taste the spinach. I'm like, yeah, think of it as delivery of fat to your bowel and you will. But by that point, the fiber is very low. And so you look at people on like the beef and butter fast where there's really no fiber in that. And then you say, well, if you're going to kind of split the middle of ketogenic versus like a carnivore options, there are vegetables that are really high in fat by the time you finish preparing them, that the fiber content is really low. And truly, they continue to have improvement in their inflammatory processes throughout their, whether it's joints or bowels or, eyes or brain. That continued improvement in decreased amount of carbs, but also you start adding fiber and those carbs will go up. And that shift is something you got to play with inside your own story. And I think like when you and I first met, like how much fiber were you eating? Like not in the beef and butter fast, just the normal time. Like,
well, I ever since after the beef and butter fast, I learned that vegetables do stall me. Believe it or not. Like, and I love vegetables, So I knew then that I needed to have more protein and less veggie. So my fat protein mix. So I'm trying to remember. I think my diet, honestly, I think my diet was pretty straight on. I think my problem was that I needed to fast. I needed to push that metabolic, I don't know if you call it metabolic syndrome or whatever. You get to a certain point where your body becomes accustomed to how you eat and you just stall out, even though you're eating the right stuff. So I'm going to say it was right on. I'm going to say it was fine.
Yeah. The other part that I've found people say, well, how much fiber should I be having? Is I'll totally send them back to their own numbers. And there are some fibrous foods that I really don't increase my sugar, but I almost don't eat them anymore. Like they are so out of the routine for me now that I've been doing this so long, as I don't know that I could even tell you the last time I did this challenge myself. But when I'm coaching a patient on, well, how much fiber should I have? I'm like, once you get through that transition, the key is if you've got one of these like new products that have fiber in them, but they say, oh, the carbs are low, and they play, I call it the fiber game, which is they tell you you've got carbs and then they subtract the fiber, so then those don't count. But I will tell you, check your blood sugars and your ketones. If it shifts a lot within 30 minutes and within an hour of taking that, I'm telling you, I don't care what their commercial says, your body will tell you what your system is doing. So just check. Yeah. And I think that's, again, what happened to you and I, is that the more you look, you're like, oh, if I do that, I end up without the benefits of.
Yeah. It's really eye-opening when you can do that. You know what? Speaking of which, let's talk about the Dr. Boz ratio. Let's talk about testing your ketones and your glucose, because first of all, I have to apologize. I took a social media break and I have probably thousands of questions that I don't even know how I'm going to be able to return. I do remember one of them, and a lot of people ask me to ask you stuff. So I'm just going to, now that we're talking about testing your own numbers, I think it's important to reiterate, because I did send out that spreadsheet. Anybody who's on my email list got a free printable to help them to track their numbers when they do fasting. But let's talk about how you test them. So Dr. Boz and I use a blood glucose meter that also tests ketones. And what you do is you test your glucose number and you test your ketone number, and you divide the two, glucose by ketone, and you get a number. So your goal is to be 80 or below. If your number is 80 or below, that's pretty much weight loss zone, some autophagy. 40 or below, you're in an immune boosting state. You're definitely in autophagy. And if you hit 20 or less, you're amazing, because that is super, super hard to do. And that's pretty much cancer fighting properties. So that spreadsheet has been really helpful. But there were some people that asked, do you do this once a week? Do you do this just until you hit this? Is there, can you fast too much? Like, they wanted you to really talk a little bit more about that fasting.
So that's great. While we're doing this, just for those that are new, I'll do it in front of you. So I just poked my finger, and I have the same monitor that Jennifer talks about on her channel. We both share and recommend the same one.
Mhm.
But the key thing here, and the reason I do this in person is because I show people how easy it is to do this. So again, the strips that are white, they allow you to check in and see what your sugars are. So I've been fasting for probably, I had lunch around noon. And then I try to fast on Sundays. So here I am a few hours into my fast. And I'll tell you, when I first started on the ketogenic diet, I didn't do this. I just checked urine ketone strips and got the diet figured out. And then really did not get to this level of testing. Now I've got a purple strip in and I'm checking the ketones.
And I want to point out, while she's showing the number, notice she did it on the side of her finger. Like, that's the part where it's less painful, because when most people want to stick it like right in the center, and that's where all your nerve endings are. So if you do it right on the side, you hardly even feel it. Right. I was a little bit of a sister.
Yes. Mine. and so people say, well, how long should I be there? And, it is the danger of answering that question with a steadfast answer is that there are different people at different phases. So personally, when I first started, if I could get the Dr. Boz ratio under 100, and if you've got 85 and you're dividing it by 0.4, I am not under 100. But anytime I checked, I would want to have that number under 100 if I was trying to lose weight, or if I was trying to get trying to like check myself, how am I doing? What you're really estimating with these two numbers is insulin. If I would send Jennifer Marie to the lab and say, I'm going to check her insulin, it'd cost her $75, and it would be kind of useless because one number of insulin doesn't tell you much. If I sent her in to say, okay, go in fasting after 14 hours of no food and no drink, and then you're going to check your insulin, then we're going to give you some sugar, then we're going to check your sugar and insulin every half an hour to hour for the next 5 hours, it would cost her nearly $2,500 at most labs. And the sad part is it would tell you how her insulin is for one day. That's a waste of her energy and time. Insulin does this as it goes up. It's never going to be like the perfect answer for that micro moment. It's going to go up and down and up and down and up and down, and then get higher, and then it's going to go up and down and get lower. When you use this ratio, what you're really estimating is how is your insulin doing? And again, one number, like these numbers are what they are. They're fine. It's not my best numbers, but I fast to get to a Dr. Boz ratio of 40 once a week in hopes that I can document that I really do stress my immune system. I really challenge my mitochondria to bring to step up their game, if you would, to lower the sugar and increase the production of ketones to hit that goal. And then I'm kind of a steady as you my just to kind of hit a little goal and then get off, and then hit another little goal and then get off. When Grandma Rose, which is my mother, I wrote about in my book, when she was fighting her battle with cancer, she did not have the privilege of steady and slow. She had to get her Dr. Boz ratio to 20 or less for most of a month and a half. And it required a very strict ketogenic diet. We actually had to limit calories during that time. She ended up fasting for almost 30 plus days. The goal was 40 days. We didn't quite make 40 days. And the reason I point that out is there was a question on here just a minute ago saying, is there a number that's too low? I'm like, no. What you're doing is each kind of layer of suppressing that ratio, meaning you take your glucose, divide by your ketone. If you get it under 80, we know you've got a pretty good number for weight loss, and you've probably got some autophagy going. I really want autophagy of kind of cleaning up any debris in my brain and repairing any injury I have and maybe improving my skin or something. I want that every week, a Dr. Boz ratio of 40 every week. And if I hit that, I have confidence where I'm not just guessing. I'm not just playing willy-nilly. I know that there's a really good chance I hit it if my Dr. Boz ratio hit 40. But then I go back to my regular keto living, and I have this question a lot too, saying, well, how high did it go? Like, well, If I keep it under 100 the rest of the week, I know I'm doing great. But you can see I just did it and it's not quite there. So yeah. Does that answer it?
Yeah, I think it does. I think that's a really good explanation. Sorry, I'm reading a lot of questions about the beef and butter fast. So I have a little confession. I haven't done a fast challenge in a while. I used to do them once a month, and I ended up taking off time to write a cookbook. And I haven't gotten back to it. The cookbook has been published, but honestly, I'm really trying to find time to run that group because it's a free thing. So it's really hard to find time to do all these things for everybody. So I'm trying to get a team of people to maybe help me with that. So those who have requested to get in the beef and butter fast group, I haven't approved anybody new yet because I haven't done a challenge, but it is on my list and it is bumped up to the priority part of the list, of a list this long. But I'm hoping to start a challenge soon. So stay tuned. I have a team working on it.
Mm-hmm. Well, so there's a question in here of somebody else who just said, can ketone levels get too high or have a cause for concern, like upwards of 3 or 4? So let's talk about when Jennifer first started checking her numbers. She has really good metabolism. Now, part of that is she'd been doing keto for a while by the time we started consulting. And then every time she kind of pushed her body to the next level, you could see her ketones rise. And I actually can't remember. Have you ever had a 4, a ketone level of 4? Right. Okay. So, but she's never really pushed the height to be that level. But if she ended up with like breast cancer, and I was saying, let's do everything we can to make this cancer treatment protocol better, I would push her to do a fast for 5 days because of her age, because of that diagnosis. And if you watch what happens in somebody like Jennifer Marie, whose metabolism is really strong, and then we ask her to take it up to the next level, she might produce ketone levels up to 7 or 8 by the end of that 6th day. And you say, oh my goodness, is she going to have ketoacidosis? No, those are ketones like 15, and their sugars are high. Their sugars are 200, 250, 300, 500, 600. So here she has sugars that are, you actually have really good sugars, like 70s, 80s, very common to see that. And if she did fast all the way to that 5th day or something, or 6th day, you could see her ketone numbers pump up really high. I had a patient in our support group fast for the week leading up to Easter, and he documented all of his numbers. And I bet him it wouldn't go above like 7. And like the next day he woke up and it was 8 point something. I'm like, well, all right. Again, not too high for concern, but it's a reflection of your metabolism. Make sense?
Makes sense. Makes total sense. Yeah, I've never had ketones that high. I've never fasted for 5 days either.
Yeah. Well, even if I would, I've never seen mine that high. He's a strong male, stands about, over 6 foot. So I'm like, you have enough muscle and mitochondria that you can have a ketone of 8 and it's probably normal.
So Marty says, my fasting numbers are like 86 and 2.2 on the ketones. Eating 2 tablespoons of resistant starch, cause of pruny fingers, not impacting I don't know what that is either. It's not impacting my gut. Taking electrolytes to get rid of keto pruny fingers. What is that?
I don't know what keto pruny fingers are.
We talked about a lot of stuff, from keto crotch to sex to slime layers.
Now I'm going to have to Google pruny fingers.
I don't know what pruny fingers are.
Here's the brilliant part about her comment, though, is that here she is checking with really good numbers, a glucose of 86 and ketones of 2.2. Those are really good numbers. So whatever she's doing, she has the confidence of knowing that it must be okay. Look at her numbers. I can't argue with that. Doing electrolytes, I'm going to guess she's feeling good. I don't know what pruny fingers are, but I don't almost care with those kind of numbers as long as she's feeling good and she's at her weight loss goal or still losing weight, whatever. Yeah. Good job. That's the empowerment, though. Good job.
Yeah. Gracie says, I'm usually low on ketones and she only eats about 12 carbs a day. I just don't understand. But what are your ratios? Because my ketones were low, but that's because my body was efficient at using them. So it's also going to go back to your number. So Gracie, tell me what your ratio number is, because that's going to help.
The other thing I would ask about her is, how old is she? I mean, if you look at that metabolism as you age, we really want to keep the time that you eat in the daylight hours, like that 5 o'clock and before, especially if you're a woman over the age of 40. Boy, keep that intake of calories before 5 o'clock in the evening until you're at your ideal body weight, until you really have kind of stressed your metabolism. I know that word people don't like that word, but just stress your metabolism and watch it function at a higher level until you kind of clean up the metabolic issues or the inflammatory issues you've had over the years. I see carbs, they keep their carbs nice and low. They do great, but then they stall out. And it has a lot to do with having low ketones because they keep eating after 5 o'clock and they're in a metabolic phase where they just need to stop that for a while.
Yeah. Michelle says, when you fast, is water the only thing you take in? Yes. Water, salt, black coffee, fasting teas, no sugars, no substitutes. Annette Edmondson says, what is the best meter to get, or is it okay to use ketone sticks? I would do the blood meter personally if you really, really want to know, because when you pee on the sticks, it just tells you if you're in ketosis or not. The blood will definitely tell you. We've put a link down in the comments there, and we use the 406 discount code low carb inspirations.
Yep. So when you look at the other thing I like to explain between the urine strips and the blood strips is the urine strips are really measuring a byproduct, a wasted ketone, if you would. And if there's ever a time, so you kind of empty your bladder, let's say 4 times a day, 6 times a day, what you're really measuring is in the urine that you're emptying from the bladder, did you make ketones during those few hours? And if you made them, did you make enough to spill some into your urine? And when you first go keto, it's easy. Your body doesn't know what to do with them. So you actually spill a lot of them into your urine. And so it's easy to see that on-off switch. You're in ketosis, you're not in ketosis. But kind of where you and I are at is we've graduated to a level that we don't have, we make ketones all the time. What we're really looking at is if we're making exactly the amount that we're burning, then you're probably going to stay metabolically stable. Meaning you're not going to probably lose weight. You're not probably stimulating autophagy. To really push yourself over that threshold, you need to stress the metabolism. And that means those ketones are going to bump up and that glucose is going to go down. And that's why that Dr. Boz ratio becomes so important to check it through the blood.
So Joe Valentine asked a really good question. How often should you check on the blood meter?
When you're first learning, and then this is that great experiment that you and I did where we had a glucose monitor for a while, where you can check just many times throughout the day to really satisfy your curiosity. And at the beginning, I probably checked 3 or 4 times a day. And this is when I was paying like $5 for a ketone strip. Yeah. And some of them, if the ketone strip did not work, I got really ticked and it pushed my sugars up because I got mad. But so I did it because I really wanted to understand my own metabolism better. And then I learned that there's some key times. If you're looking for the best return on your investment, morning fasting numbers are the highest power for measuring your metabolism without all the other problems in between that relate to mood and time and food and stress and all the other things. When I look at what I do now is I like to hit my goal once a week for that autophagy of 40. And then whenever I'm irritated, I like to look at what my ratio is because I just wonder what my sugars do when I get upset. So I've learned morning fastings. When I fast, I probably check 3 times a day. And then once I hit my goal, I try to stop. If I know I'm going to fast through the night into the next morning, I sometimes will be cheap and skip the evening check just because, like, okay, why?
I know they're expensive.
Oh yeah, and
so Are you checking when you're frustrated because those cortisol levels rise and then it causes the blood sugar? You know what? I'm going to test when my husband's driving because I tell him all the time. Yes, I can feel my cortisol levels rising.
Oh yeah, I've learned to look down and just be on my computer or just not going to say a thing. I like being married.
Awesome. Well, we've had a lot of really good discussion here. If you guys find this helpful at all, could you support Dr. Boz and I and share out this video so that we can share this really good information with a lot of people, with as many people as we can. We just want to share the keto way of life and how beneficial it is. We believe in it strongly. And Dr. Boz, let's tell them about your book. Let's tell them about your Instagram channel. How can they follow you on Instagram?
So Dr. B or DRBOZ _ Annette Bosworth. But if you type in DRBOZ, I pretty much am the one that comes up on Instagram. And again, you can watch me do my fasting. I post my numbers. I do my pre and post workouts. I'll check my numbers, my Dr. Boz ratio. And boy, there's just a lot of learning that comes when you share your life as you're doing it. I think that's where I find it useful. Other people find it useful, I think, too. So
it is totally useful. Totally useful. Annette's asking, can you buy a meter from CVS, Walmart? You know, they do have those cheaper meters, but they're not going to have the ketone. You're going to need to you want the meter. It's going to cost a little bit more, but you want the meter that has the glucose and the ketone together, because you don't want to buy two different machines. Right. And we put the link down there. So
I really think that FORACARE it has a good product too. I learned how solid this meter was after several patients had told me about it, and after I'd been to the $5 a strip and it wasn't working. So I've just found it very useful. Yes.
Awesome. Well, if you guys could share, that would really help us out. We would appreciate that. We appreciate all the love that we get from both of our books. From the show them your book. Do you have your book with you? Any way you can.
Yes.
And the keto-friendly recipes, easy keto for busy people. It is number 7 in the whole country when it's ranked against other cookbooks. I cannot even believe it. It's been out for a month and it's still in the top 10. So thank you all for the amazing reviews you've given on Amazon. Thank you for messaging me and showing me the food that you make with it. I love that.
Yes.
I love it. All right. It's been fun. Happy Father's Day to all the wonderful dads out there. Have a wonderful evening. We'll talk to everybody later. Good evening.
Please subscribe to my channel. And don't forget to click the notification bell so you don't miss out on any new videos. Stay tuned.